second or third team out of the playoff hunt. So it looks like they're going to be floating around there. But moving on to our next game, this is one that is going to, you know, at least especially for me, it's not going to be that fun to talk about, but it sparks a transition, and that is the New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. I projected the Bears to win this game 26-20. They did end up winning 24-20, but that was by a two-score comeback. This is the fourth time this season that this team has led with like a 90+% chance to win a game in the fourth quarter, and they've ended up losing that game. So this 2-8 Giants team, in reality, they could be 6-2. They could be 6-2 right now, or excuse me, 6-4. And you're not gonna go win every comeback situation when you're a team in the NFL. You're in X many situations where you can come back and win. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about games where you have a 90% chance to win or higher, and you're not winning that game. Not once in a season, not twice. Two bad beats. This is the fourth time. And I understand this offense is missing Cam Scatterboo, Malik Neighbors, but to be honest, the offensive line is playing pretty decently. I'm not gonna act like Dart is working with much help at all, but it's just I would expect consistency in that game plan throughout the entire game to finish out these games. Like if you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna jump ahead two scores, why can't you finish the game? And it's just really frustrating as a Giants fan. It really is. So for me, my takeaway is if I'm the Bears, kind of like I said about the Broncos, I'm not that happy coming away from this game. You almost lost to the Giants. Now they let everyone come back and win, but still, it's not that great for them. But for the Giants, they're now a 2-win football team, and for their tankathon or whatever, that's going to have them down in probably the top 6 or so because they have the toughest strength of schedule. There's a ton of 2-win teams right now, so they're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna have some top 3 pick or anything. It's just a really awkward spot for the Giants, and this brings me all the way around to Brian Dable, Joe Shane, Shane Bowen. Guys, I think it's just time. I mean, I've held on for this, first season that Brian Dable had, and I praised him for what he's done and what he's dealt with. But at this point, if he's a package deal with Joe Shane, which is why I don't understand the talk about, firing just Dable and keeping Joe Shane. If he's a package deal, I want him gone. I want Shane gone. I want Bowen gone because ultimately they are all responsible for the state of this football team. Shane and Dable for letting go of Martindale, everything kind of going even more downhill after that. And then, the state of the roster when it comes to depth in the, with the offensive players like wide receivers and then the offensive line and then for the defense with the secondary. It's just and the kicker situation, which honestly has haunted us as much as this offensive line thing has. Not just, this year or even the Dable Shane regime, but even before that and our special
Mm-hmm.
teams. So I think Brian Dable could be a good coach. I think he can be. But I'm not sure the Giants are the right team for him to do that on. And I'm definitely sure that like this whole regime is not the right regime to move forward with Jackson Dart. Even though they did draft him, I'm convinced Dart is good enough that with his talents and the talent on his defense, I do actually think a head coach would say, "Hey, this team was in winning position 4 times, and they blew those games. This is not the worst football team ever. This isn't like the Jets or the Browns where like they score 10 points in a game. Like this team has been competitive, and they just haven't brought it together. And I think some coaches would be excited to, take on that opportunity. So this isn't exactly a headline question, but Dan, do you agree? Do you agree that I think
Oh, bro,
he should be gone?
I I have been saying this since the beginning. I know we talk about like whether he's gonna be in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season. And this is what I'm gonna say, like a bold prediction that I feel like, right? If the Eagles don't go so far, and then we ended up, messing up in the playoffs or whatever the case is, and Dable gets fired, I don't see the shock. And hear me out. Dable coached Hurts back in Oklahoma when he was saucing in the beginning. If Dable lost his job and then came to Philly as a starter,
You lagged out a little bit. But if you're saying, yeah, he went to Philly, I think that would be very effective. I think he could absolutely maximize a guy like Jalen Hurts and use him in a very similar way to Jackson Dart with his legs. Obviously, we see Brian Dable do a lot of creative things with the run game. And it would also just make sense, right? Letting one of your really what seems to be like a good asset, but letting him go to the Eagles to be the offensive coordinator would be really, painful as a Giants fan because I would just know it would work out. All right. Well, seems like we've lost Dan for the moment, so I'll just quickly remind you guys of the players who had the best day in that game. Tracy was actually pretty good on the ground. Dart was a monster on the ground, 6 for 66 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He had like a 25-yard rushing touchdown. He was 19 of 29 with 242 yards. He was only sacked twice. Slayton had a pretty good game. He had a one-handed catch that was probably the greatest catch of his entire career. But then he exited the game with a hamstring injury, and that was, very unfortunately for me to say, that was very Darius Slayton thing to happen. Just like as soon as he has a good day, something else just goes wrong for him. And you're back, Dan. For the
and we're
time
back.
for the time being, I just kind of refreshed them on the stats from the Giants game and whatnot. But you agree? You think? And I talked about the idea of Brian Dable being in Philadelphia and how that kind of would be him following in Saquon's steps and probably having more success and it looking like a bad idea for the Giants and everything. And I think no matter where Dable goes, it's gonna sort of recoil and look bad on the Giants. But I think we got to move on to the next game, and that's Bills at Dolphins.